Okay, it's
Yes.
green.
Okay, so Kristen, thank you very much I just wanted to introduce you quickly to the students of the housing seminar course at Wits University School of Architecture and Planning. So Dr. Kristen Kornienko is based in Canada and is working closely with a team in Kliptown, Freedom Charter Square Informal Settlement. They together have formed an organization called 1955. And I think the students have all had a look at that website and looked at your profiles on that website, I hope. But I would still like to hand over to you, Kristen, to perhaps introduce the team. Just to mention, Kristen has a long history in our school. She did a PhD with us. She first came as a Fulbright, did a PhD with us, did a postdoc with us, and has a visiting affiliation ongoing with the school. And it's very exciting to have her because she's doing some very, very, I think, profound work and is willing to share this with us. So thank you very much.
Well, if it's profound, it's thanks to the 3 partners I collaborate with in Kliptown. So I'd like to start by letting each of them introduce themselves, and so I'll pass it over to you, Thabang.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Thabang Kwanyana, and I'm a South African born. I stay in Kliptown, Soweto. I'm a self-taught visual artist, and I love art. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Ginger from Kliptown. I'm also a visual artist. I've been teaching art at the art school here in Kliptown. Yeah, I've been learning different art forms actually. Thanks.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Robert Shai from Kliptown. I'm just an activist in Kliptown.
And we should say Robert has a long history with this course as well, because he often takes the students for the field trip in Kliptown. So it's great that he can be here to virtually guide you around Kliptown. And the majority of the photography that you'll see today is the work of Ginger and Thabang, who are both just, you know, have an extraordinary way of seeing Kliptown and showing it. I think that is very unique and quite extraordinary. And so I'm really pleased that all of you will get to see their work today. As Marie said, I usually am in Joburg 2 to 3 months of the year, and for 14 years now. And the rest of the time I live in Western Canada on the traditional lands of the Secwepemc Nation, which I like to share to break the propaganda of Canada that is actually stolen land, because no treaties were ever signed in this part of Canada. And Canada likes to market itself as a sort of gentle giant from the north. And we, in reality, have very similar colonial dynamics here as you have in South Africa. And it's actually really helped all of the long relationships with people like Thabang and Robert and Ginger, who have taught me enormously, and you know, it's helped me to do the work I do here as well, because I do work here as well as teaching architecture at the RAIC Center for Architecture at Athabasca University. I also work on trying to change the course content as far as racism and post-colonial content. So I'm hugely indebted to South Africa for that. And so I'd like to start, I think unless you have a plan, either Marie or Neil, I'd like to, whether you want us to show all 5 of the films, each one's just right around 5 minutes, or if you think it would be more useful to sort of show one and then have a discussion, and maybe let Tabang and Ginger and Robert comment on them. Maybe
yes, I think I agree, Kristen. Let's show them one at a time and have a discussion after each one.
Okay, perfect. All right.
And that allows the students who've been assigned their themes to also think through questions, and they can come back to those clips in the later discussion again. Thank you.
Exactly. Okay, perfect. Then I'll start sharing my screen. And if you can let me know if you all see it.
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay, so maybe if Tabang and Robert and Ginger, you'd like to make some comments on what we just saw. Or we could have the students ask questions, which
So can I quickly say that that those were very incredible images, and I think the slow pace of it really made one look quite deeply, and one almost wants to look at it 10 times over. I think the use of material was something. The use of material and the effects of that use of material is something that I'd really think is worth having a conversation about. And I wonder if the students want to mention some of the observations they made. You can raise your hand, or if it's silent, you can just chip in.
Hello.
Anthony, yes, please start, Anthony. Anthony, can you unmute yourself and start? Anthony, we can't hear you, although you are unmuted now. Would you like to put your question into the chat if we can't hear you? So I'd like to put in the keyword of reuse of material and see whether that can spark some questions from the students.
and maybe also it's interesting to look at how some of the materials that are used are solid and visually block as well as defining the space, and others simply define the space, but you can see through. And so that's an interesting thing to think about as well.
Hello.
Yes?
Okay. So I also observed something at the entryway. Almost, I saw like a reuse of tiles. So it might have been like broken pieces of tiles, but they were like put together almost like a, what's the word? You know how you put together broken pieces of glass?
Mosaic.
A mosaic.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, so that was interesting to see. I grew up seeing that when where I come from, but didn't really think of it as, like a reuse sort of. But it's beautiful to see how broken pieces of something can be put together to try and make it neater, I guess, more appealing.
Thinks about that. Actually, around here in Kliptown, we use broken tiles to create our spaces, since there's no enough soil and the soil is not good, it's a wetland, so it's better if you will build on tiles because it can last longer as well. But you don't have money, so we use found material. Some people will renovate their house, and then once they throw away the tiles, someone can pick them up and reuse them as well.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, it's good observation.
Maybe I have a question. Is there any social status related to building materials? I know from the Moroccan context that, for example, building with cement is some sort of gaining status. How would you say it in the context of Kliptown?
If I can understand you well, you are saying the idea of using broken tiles.
I was wondering whether there is a certain social status that relates to the material that I use for construction. Like, do you gain in status if you have a house built out of brick and cement, especially?
Yes, we do. Usually, if I'm not mistaken, what we're trying to find out is if, like, as we build, the way we gauge. So, for instance, if I were to build now for three wheelbarrows of cement, I mean 3 wheelbarrows of soil and 1 bag of cement, it's called 3 to 1 or 4 to 5. So that's how we gauge. It's our mixing process for cement to be solid and stuff.
And Tabong, do you think that there's social implications to, you know, do people have a different sort of social status if they're living in a solid house as opposed to the zinc house, as opposed to some of the ones that are just even made from fabric?
I don't think so, because compared Kliptown is a ghetto. So whether you have a mansion in a ghetto, it's still a mansion in a ghetto. So it's not about status, it's also about people trying to fix their own spaces in their own comfortable way, other than just letting it be, you know.
Related with that, one of the students has written in a question saying, such a big variety of houses. Some of the houses look like they have been there for many years with tall trees outside. So
yes,
one of you could talk a little bit about the history of Kliptown and why there is such a diversity of architecture in the community.
Yes, mind you, Kliptown is the first LCT. It is even here before the Johannesburg CBD. It's been long here, and like even life is different. We have also like formal and informal structures.
and according to our understanding, most of the houses around Kliptown remember, Kliptown was someone's land, and then who made sales, people can buy it privately. So people build different structures as well. So each and every house around Kliptown is different from next door. So, and these houses, they are over 70 years or more, if I'm not mistaken. Some of them are falling down already. That's besides the shacks. We're talking the structures, normal structures of houses around Kliptown. They're each different from each and every one. So people will come, whomever had his own idea or a plan, they'll build that.
And T, can you tell a little bit too about how those houses are often divided up by multiple?
Oh yes, as well. Like these houses, you find it's a big house structure on the outside, but as you get inside, you find there are like 4 different doors or 3 different doors that leads to other different families, different families. So on an outside structure, it's one big house, but as you get in, there's a small passage that will lead you to door number 1, door number 2, that's both left and right. So Yeah. And inside you find there about maybe it's one big room, and then obviously we will divide it to accommodate. There'll be a bed maybe and some sitting space.
So Tepang, there's several households living in each of those houses, is that right?
Sorry? Come again?
There are several households living in each of those
Yes.
bigger houses, is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Each occupying a
Exactly.
room.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
And Chidi,
And could I quickly ask, have people been living in those houses, in those particular rooms for a long time, or is there a turnover? Are people moving in and out?
No, the idea is it's different circumstances for different houses. Some came because, you know, they wanted like to rent, you know, and with time, you know, you find they are no longer renting, they are staying there, and the owners of the house maybe go to greener pastures, and you find other families starting to occupy the space. Those who are renting now becomes the host, and they rent other people. And other people in other circumstances, it's people who don't have a place to stay. So in terms of Ubuntu, you know, they are being accommodated, and with time they become part of the family, you know, and yeah. So it's different circumstances.
and would you say,
Kristen, I realize we've had 10 minutes discussion.
okay,
I wonder if we
Can
could
I
have
ask
the
a
next
quick
clip.
question?
yep.
Sorry, Marie.
Yes, and I see
Can I
the
ask just
two
a-
on the chat, but I just want to say the two questions on the chat. The one relates to water, which I think we'll return to, and the other one with the variety of housing types and fences and so on. And I think it's also a theme we'll return to because it also gets to the hawking and so on. Yes.
Can I just ask a quick question related to private spaces? Is one
Yes, Neil.
notices from the films is the decorated stoops? Is that something quite well? Is there sort of a tradition in the area of that kind of design of decorating and creating those seating areas outside the front doors?
all four of us are laughing.
Yeah.
Actually, my brother, exactly, you know, each and every stoop, it has its own different characters. There are some stoops, other people will use the old polish just to make them clean, and they're always shiny and that. And then there are these of tiles, of which it is sort of like a tradition, especially when coming summer season. There'll be much rain. In a place like Kliptown, you find there's mud, especially if your stoop is not perfect. But with tile, it becomes simpler even to maintain and wash. So yes, I agree with you.
Yeah, it's an interesting feature. You don't see it in that many settlements. You know, you do see the occasional stoop, but I've noticed in Freedom Park there's a lot. There's Freedom Square. There's seems to be more than average.
They're beautiful there. The reason we all laugh
Yeah.
is because we drag around and look at them all the time. So yeah, it's quite a unique character of that part of Kliptown. Okay, so I'll start the second film.
Jessina.
Thanks, Kristen. Gosh. So, who would like to comment? Who'd like to?
I was wondering who has financed the construction of a church and the community center.
The community center is an old government structure, and it's been used as a community center right now. And as for churches, there are different churches around Kliptown. Like the first church that appeared, that sort of like nice structure. It's the Charlotte Maclega Church. Charlotte Maclega's church. It's AME. AME. Sorry. AME stands for American Anglican something. So I'm not a church goer, but it's an American church that Charlotte Maclega adopted and introduced around Kliptown.
Okay.
So yeah, it's been there for over 50 years as well. So it's one of the heritage sites around Kliptown. And as for the shack, the one that's with zinc material, it's newly built around here. I think the church members they contributed, they built their own structure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So Tabang, the zinc structure, the large zinc structure is actually a church, is that right?
Yes, it is a church. It's the latest church. It's the other structures we've shown that are standing, proper structure that are standing, are old churches, and that one maybe it's just 10 years or 12 years around. It's been started recently, maybe 12, 15 years back, but the other ones, they are on National Heritage Site. The other white one with the red door, the people are no longer attending there now, but it's one of the oldest church that was used apparently during apartheid times.
Especially by colors. Yeah.
It was only meant for white people like your coloreds and your Bure around Kliptown and back then.
So is it standing vacant now?
Yeah, they are still using it, but it's standing vacant because there are no windows around. But they are still using it as a church. But now more community members are attending. So it was during COVID, we couldn't get the videos. But I'm sure as it opens now, more community members have seen them attending that church. It's now mixed race other than before when it was white every day.
Before I fire my next question, I wanted to see if any student wanted to come in.
There's a question in the chat asking, how do people inherit property from family members that have passed? Are there issues with ownership amongst family members of the old structures in Kliptown?
Okay, I'll make a personal example from my own family. So when my family came to Joburg, I don't know how they got a piece of land, but as they didn't only come to Joburg alone. After years, some of their friends from KZN and Swaziland, they followed them to Joburg and they didn't have any space to stay. So my grandmother, who was so good at other people, cut them their own land on her own family yard. So even today, those people are still there in my yard, and we regard them as almost as family members because they're also from where our great grandmother came from. So you'll give someone, you find people, they'll get land, and then they share the land with other family members, or there are people who coming from the same area, and then you find I know of, there was this Chinese man who used to call him Makuluskop. Makuluskop means big head. The Chinese man had a big head, so we call him Makuluskop. So Makuluskop, when he left Kliptown, he gave his place to another lady who was staying just opposite Makuluskop. That lady stayed there she had a big family, but it was a small house. So Makuluskop gave them the shop. They are currently staying there as well. And then you find like other spaces like because remember, Kliptown had businesses everywhere. There was no railway line that demarcated Kliptown. Kliptown was one big community. So on the other side, where now there's a railway, on our side, the ghetto especially, old shops like I say, Chinese, when they left their business spaces, people accommodated those spaces, and also they inherited them as their own, since the Chinese have left the spaces vacant. I'm not sure if I make sense.
Yeah, no, that did. There's another quick question to follow that up, asking if there are government schools in Kliptown and if they're maintained by the department.
A great question. There is a school that was meant for Kliptown, but it's now Lily Day, but it started in Kliptown on a communal hall, but now it's no longer around Kliptown. It's been used and the name has been taken. They built the school around Dlamini, of which is a more structural space and a more suited developed site. And then we also have a school called Kliptown Primary and Kliptown High, but they are both in Eldos Extension 9. So literally around Kliptown, you don't have no school. We have no clinics. Our clinic is also at Eldos. It's been called Kliptown Clinic. That's an interesting part. So, sorry, there are no schools, no hospitals. There's nothing that's been maintained yet.
And is that partly because the boundary of Kliptown is shrinking, as we've talked about? What used to be considered like, so with the what is now Eldos 9, Extension 9, was that originally part of Kliptown when those schools were built?
We'll assume that,
Yeah.
because like there's Kliptown Extension 10, Kliptown Extension 9. For instance, Extension 10 is just within Kliptown, the ghetto itself, but it's a more developed space. And I'm sure it was the houses when they were first built. I'm not sure what they were built for or whom they were built for, because it's only colored people who are staying there. There are only 3 black families there. I know those are my friends' families, but the rest, as I used to visit there, it's only colored people or colored neighborhood, even around Extension 9. So, yeah. So I'm not sure if the houses or those structures were meant for people of Kliptown, even if they were after built, because only few of them stay within that area, especially.
Okay. And then there's one more question from a student. I also noticed a lack of parks and green spaces. Children are seen playing mainly in the streets and most likely play within the private space in a creche. Is this due to a lack of space in Freedom Charter Square? And
True.
won't you add the other question about creches, the one right above, because they
Exactly.
relate. And then I
Yeah.
think after that, we need to move to the next clip
Okay.
after the answer. Yes.
So the other question that's related, T, is is there a form of planning in the distribution of the creches? And Robert may know as well, because he's quite involved with those.
Come again, Christine.
Is there a form of planning in the distribution of the creches? And also just, so that's one question. And the other question is about parks and open spaces and where, you know, where children have space to play.
So far, what I can say, when coming to spaces where children play, children have no playing spaces, as we don't have parks like around here. They just play everywhere. They play on the drainage. What I can say, they've got no space to play.
Yeah, and probably there is no plan. Like as you've seen with the crutches, it's when someone, the plan like has like a passion to take care of children. They just open that just sort of a business. You've noticed the mighty evolution crèche. It is very small, you know, and there's no space to maneuver. It's just that the owner has a passion for that, and he started doing it. You know, there's no like a playing area, but the idea is he's pushing his passion.
Okay, thank you. So shall we, unless somebody has a final quick question, we'll move on to the third film. I think one of the things that was shown really well in this film is how the community of Freedom Charter Square, as unlike some other shack communities where there's almost like a high street within the community itself, how Freedom Charter Square sort of has occupied Main Street and Union Street there, and uses the edges of the roads as sort of their high street space, as opposed to having it right inside the community. Would you guys agree with me with that? Siobhan?
Yep. Yeah. It's like at Union Road, every corner and every space is for business, because like I could say Kliptown is one of the oldest like market space. So it's the first town within Soweto, if I hear, and so it attracts more people, and there's only one main street that will lead you into different streets or different other ways as well. So once you are in Union Road, you are in the biggest streets around Kliptown. So that's why it's so busy, and every space it's used. So there's no walking space. As you walk between the market itself.
Kristen, can I come in there?
I'm just
and ask. Yes. Is there ever any government attempts to regulate that trade? I seem to remember that the trading in the actual Walter Sisulu Memorial Square was taken away at some point, or it's being allowed there again, or is it only allowed on one side of it? You know, is there a pushback at any point from the government for this this vibrant economic activity to take place in those public spaces?
Okay, so as Kliptown was a market space before, and when the government erected the Walter Sisulu Memorial Space, they also tried to make this structure. We did notice where some wall or people like under it. So it's like there is a market space, but that market space still can accommodate or even give everyone from Soweto what they need within that space. So the people themselves, like, they've taken up to themselves and they've pegged the street. And yeah, now and then you find metros coming, taking people's stuff from the street. But that's what makes Kliptown, I think, because without those businesses as well, both sides, left and right, and it's only the main street, there is no Kliptown. Because like if you check in those videos, you could see there are big business structures like supermarkets and stuff where people can buy other essential goods, but the business is outside. That's what makes Kliptown, and the business around the streets of Kliptown. Yeah.
T, related to what you're talking about, there's a question from a student in the chat box. It says,
Yes.
what's been the impact of COVID-19 on the informal livelihoods, and how has the community organized itself to cope with the shock?
Yeah, it has, especially when it was in level 4, I think it was very much severe for especially those who are selling on the streets, because no one was allowed to, you know, sell their goods. Yeah, it really impacted them severely. So what they did was to go into communities, you know, sell to people in their own houses. In a way, yeah. Did that answer that question?
You did, thanks. And was there an impact, do you think, as well, that people had to shop at, like, say, the Pick and Pay, the local Pick and Pay, which is much more expensive than the street trading?
The impact was high, especially in Pick and Pay. You can imagine the lines that they are still there even today. The lines for people waiting to enter Pick and Pay, and you know, you only for the idea, simple idea, you only want to buy a bread, but you have to wait for maybe 30 or 40 people to buy first. So yeah, that itself, you know, it's not good enough. And the idea of the spread of the virus itself, because you find people are not using the regulations of 1.5 meter. You know, they become so clustered, yeah. So yeah, it has impacted, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Ginger. And there's another question here. What's the opinion of people from the community about Walter Sisulu Square? I was.
Walter Sisulu Square shouldn't be there. We don't see any logic or any reason other than for a government to come host their big parties once they're celebrating 1955. But Walter Sisulu Square is there accommodating the space that should have been taken by the people of Kliptown. Could have built houses there and made sense to our history as well, especially the Freedom Charter. But the government decided to build us that huge wall that doesn't do anything for us. Like we have floods around Kliptown, and I don't remember even a single day the management or the Walter Sisulu Square as a Freedom Charter space say accommodating people living in a flat line and saying, okay, let's accommodate you, move away from, yeah, come, we have a big wall. Like for instance, we have people here right now within the COVID who are staying on those flat line, and it's been cold and there have been no one, but the Walter Sisulu Square was closed and renovated. So Walter Sisulu Square does nothing for Kliptown. As far as Kliptown community people, it's just a white elephant to host big ANC events. That's it.
There's another question here that I think is quite nice because it gets at the real character of Kliptown. The student asks, are the shops mostly owned by South African nationals, or is there or are there foreign shop owners? And is that an issue in Kliptown, or does everyone live harmoniously? Maybe you could talk a little bit about Kliptown's long history of being a multicultural community.
I waited for that question. Thank you. Whomever asked that question, thank you. Kliptown, since the implementation of Freedom Charter, few black people own shops and few people around Kliptown own shops back then. And even after freedom or after the post 94, we don't have many black people who are owning shops around Kliptown. The businesses and land around Kliptown, it's being owned by mostly Muslims, and only few families like your Nana, Takolias, Charas. So they own most of the land, even the shops. Other people are building shops on top of their land, so they'll be paying them as well. So we only have one black man from Kliptown who literally owns land. He's the first, and he's the first after since 1994. So he's the only person who owns land within this business space. But most of these businesses are owned by other people whom they won't even give community members a chance to hire a space. We required for a space many a times, but we were never given the space. Just like the Walter Sulu Square, the space they'll be given to Pakistanians. Unless you're a Muslim, you can get space around Kliptown. Let me basically say that if you are not a Muslim, you must be an Indian or a colored. But other than that, you won't get anything from Walter Sulu Square, like the whole business of Kliptown. So no one owns any business who's from Kliptown, especially these big businesses. They are being owned by people who from lands, like I say, mostly Indian communities. Yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
I think that answers it really well. And maybe can you also say a little bit about Kliptown itself's history of being a multicultural community?
Yes, so Kliptown, it is a multicultural space, because like I said, I mentioned Makulu, Skop, Mafuta, those were the Chinese people who were staying here. So people from all different walks of the world, they came and bought land in Kliptown. And you find Malawians people, they mostly, I'm sorry, but they mostly attend the Indian community church, the Islamic church. So it's easier for them to even get jobs here. And we have the Maputo people. The Maputo people, mostly they are the ones who are occupying the streets and selling their vegetables, you know. Those are from Maputo. So for each and type of business around Kliptown, there's a certain race that's doing it. Even everything. The guys who are fixing the phones, for instance, around the square, they are guys from Kliptown, the Sowetan. So those ones, they deal with phone, fixing laptops, and yeah, they'll sell the other stuff. But that's what makes Kliptown, because for each and every business, you find different characters and different races as well. But we still support each other despite our challenges. And one thing I also love about Kliptown, it's like we are a community. We have our own language that's only been spoken around Kliptown. Like I can mix Zulu with Afrikaans with Sotho, and a colored person will simply understand what I'm basically trying to say, other than having one neighborhood where you speak one language or do things this. Like, yeah, we are a mixed race community.
Kristen, we need to move on to the next clip, but I see there's some very good questions that have still come up.
There are.
Shall we return to them later?
Sure.
Because
Okay.
Just discuss. I will take it.
Thanks so much, Christina. Shall we start with the few questions still, because they do relate. We were seeing some economic activity,
Exactly.
and so on. So we could quickly go through the last questions, and then take new.
One question says, what other types of professions do people living in Freedom Charter Square do? Is informal trading the main trade, or are there people involved with other economic activities like plumbing, shoe repair, working at local shops, and so on?
Come away.
It says, what other type of jobs do people living in Freedom Charter Square do besides the informal trading? They asked if there were other activities, economic activities, and gave examples like plumbing or shoe repair or working in local shops.
Yes, there are. We do have builders, plumbers, people who are doing shoe repairs. Others even own their small shops, others small businesses selling food and so on. And they are mostly on the local shops. Like I said, they only hire. There's a stigma going on around Kliptown. Yesterday I was in this meeting. Most of the youth, they are complaining that most of the businesses around Kliptown is a business area, but people of Kliptown don't have employment opportunities. They only hire mostly Malawans and other foreign nationals. Only few Kliptownians work around Kliptown shops. They have their reasons. Shop owners, they have their reasons. One, like yesterday, as I had, like it was theft. But the argument was there's crime everywhere, there's theft everywhere, so it can't be that all the business people around Kliptown, they're not hiring the same community members who are supporting their business structures every day. So that's one of the challenges. Yesterday at the meeting, we were discussing that.
Something related to that, T, is another question. It says, when people get better in their lives, do they invest back in Kliptown, or do they move to invest in other areas? Is Kliptown advancing and progressing economically?
I could say it is advancing economically, because there wouldn't be any of these businesses that are booming. Like people, for instance, there's just another guy who came in winter and he opened up his gas business because he knows that around Kliptown, there's different people coming in, and like that, people came in and in exchange for gas bottles, or is refilling gas bottles. His business is blooming, and he just came in a few months back. So there is a big opportunity for business, but most of the people who are from Kliptown specifically, none have came back and invested in Kliptown. Beside the only man I'm saying he's the current one who owns land, and yeah, he's hiring people from Kliptown, and everyone from Kliptown he knows. Like he also is a taxi owner, so he gives opportunity to young boys to get license, drive taxis, and he's currently extending, and he hired local people. Even some are foreigners. They're good at their work. They're good at what they're doing. So we hire them, and they're working together now. They're building this place. It's just bought and renovating.
Okay, thanks. And I'm going to combine two other questions, because they're both sort of around participation. So it's related with what you're talking about, participation with the government. And one is around Walter Sisulu Square. and one is around the issue of people are seeing the stormwater drainage both from the square and down Union Road on the Kliptown side, or on the Freedom Charter Square side. And what sort of consultation is there with the government, and how has that gone?
We don't see any progress. For instance, even though Kliptown, it's now been divided or demarcated politically between Eldos and Soweto, or Dlamini and El Dorado Park. And then while if need to be, the Walter Sulu Square has its own budget that they'll use for renovations and stuff, and the councillor will approve. Obviously, it's the Walter Sulu Square. And then on the other side of the railway line, they have another different councillor who wants to do things differently. So, for instance, the councillor of Kliptown Freedom Charter will complain that the councillor of Walter Sulu Square was revamping and the building square. Now there's water. These drainage pipes are not being well managed or well built. They'll bring water this side and damage this side. So you find political involvement as well that's not benefiting the community as such. But we don't see any. There is involvement from the government, but we don't see anything going forward. It's just like a dress rehearsal. They come here, like next month they'll be here. We need to vote next year. So they'll come, promise if they'll do this, blah, 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 and then that's it. So there's no progress either way. So their involvement is not taking the people of Kliptown anyway.
And I think it's probably worth commenting as well. The four of us, last time I was there, went to the meeting on, and since then, Walter Sisulu Square has been made a national heritage site and is applying to become a World Heritage Site, which is going to create an even more complicated and complex relationship with Freedom Charter Square and Racecourse and the shack communities that are immediately adjacent to the square.
Yeah, so in a way, it's like the people of Freedom Charter, they're in a way disturbing the government's plans with the square, because the people of Freedom Charter, it's the closest community around Freedom Charter. That's why they call it Freedom Charter. And hence we have these complications. The government will want to fix their big heritage site for publicity stunt, and then we'll have these effects that will affect the people on the other side of the railway line, because now the square is flooding, the pipe has burst or something. That's what we understand, and hence we had troubles with storms on the other side as well.
And there's a question as related with that as well, saying, what explanation does the local councillor provide for Johannesburg City not repairing the roads and sidewalks within Kliptown and Freedom Charter Square settlement? These appear to be old public roads. And
hey, my sister, what's happening on those government offices?
The other thing, Christine, you must understand, the councillor herself doesn't stay in Kliptown.
That's the thing.
Yeah, so you find the elements that the decision makers are not staying in Kliptown, so they don't feel the pain that Kliptown people are feeling. So it's sort of a complication that in itself, yeah.
well, and the thing that I find shocking as well is that doesn't seem to be any accountability. That road was only paved 2 years ago that you're looking at there. 2 years, that road is gotten to that condition because they didn't design it, the project properly. They didn't put drainage pipes in properly. And so in fact, the road's worse off now than it was before because now the houses are being undermined. The foundations of the houses on the sides are being undermined because the water runs much faster on the pavement than it does on the dirt. And so, and I mean, it's really shocking that one of the pictures that you may have noticed was of a big pile of rocks. That was the solution, but those rocks were just dropped off, and then the community members are expected to fix the road with that because it got to the point from the erosion you couldn't get down. But then with the road, those stones in the road, the trucks to clean out the toilets couldn't come down the street. So, you know, there's just, it's really shocking how that's being handled. And there doesn't seem to be any step in from the government to have any kind of accountability for why that such a bad job was done.
We usually call it a fast break with the shutters, you know. Yeah, a fast break is something that you just get it done with, you know. It doesn't have to be good, but just make sure you just do it any way you think it's best for you.
Yeah. And
even those rocks you're talking about, Christine, the rubble, it wasn't bought from the government. It's like the people, young boys who are staying around Kliptown who are working at Jaras. They literally delivering building material, and then now and then they get opportunities to remove rubble as they build. So we'll take the same rubble, we bring it back to the neighborhood to fill in that mess. So yeah, there's no accountability from anyone.
Yeah.
You know, so it's the way it is. Whatever it's there, people are doing it themselves.
Yeah.
That seems to answer the last question in the chat, because I'm saying that because we need to move on to the next clip.
Yeah.
There was one more question further up about flooding, and perhaps
Yes.
perhaps as we wrap up, you could say something more about that. But I think we need to move on to the next clip.
So also we can at some point address the question about, there's a question about people with disabilities and how do they manage on the streets and the sidewalks when they're in such bad conditions, so that we can work that question in as well.
Okay.
I'll put the last film on first, and then we can include those in the wrap up.
That was amazing. Thanks, Kristen. And thanks for the team for that footage. I think seeing these chemical toilets being desludged is quite something. Just that little row of chemical toilets and the conditions is, and yet they are in the entirely in the gaze of the state. So the state is very much aware of the conditions of these toilets. It's not like they've forgotten some way. Found that quite incredible.
Well, and I think the footage that taken really shows also how invasive those trucks are, coming in multiple times a week. You know, and all we're only hearing it. We're not smelling it, and you know, they come through the community, and you know, so yes, I think it really I think the footage really tells the story.
There's a direct question on who pays for the chemical toilets.
Sorry, come again.
Do you know who pays for the, one of the students is asking who pays for the chemical toilets?
So the chemical toilets, it's actually the government's project. So it's the whole, I think government is paying this company to come clean and take care of the toilets in terms of servicing it and also draining it. Yeah. So it is a government project.
And another student is asking what, well, maybe before I go on to that, there's another waste related question. How is solid waste from the household collected and or managed?
How is it managed?
Best to just say it isn't.
We around Kliptown, for instance, when it comes to waste is one of our main problems, because since we don't have proper drainage systems, we don't have proper yards that we can, in a yard, if you have a drain and you have your own private space, you can maybe have a bin that you can collect, but the rubbish or the rubble is not being collected, the waste is not being collected around Kliptown. So that's why you see most of the shots you find like people are making these dumping sites. And in one of the shots, I'm sure you have seen, there's a garden and reeds. That's us, me and my team, we transformed one dumping site into a garden spot for people to chill and have a fresh meal as well. Because like what we did, we went to the reeds and we collected some dry reeds to cover the whole toilet, so that as well, just to give it some privacy, some respected space. And then at the back, because it was a dumping site, that's where we made our garden, just to show people as well that we can use our own space in a positive way. But as well, people are complaining, where will they dump their waste? Because we don't have, waste is not collected around Kliptown. So waste is one of our problems, since they're not collecting and we don't have any drainage system. And what's been happening lately, like I said, we didn't know that there was a pipe at Union Road that's coming across from the square. So people are starting to manipulate that pipe as well, making illegal toilet connections for themselves. Because like they also don't wanna use those toilets that the government is supplying. So people are making these illegal connections, of which it goes back down to the river and straight down to the river. That's where it will go and meet fresh water. I don't want to talk about the rest.
Yeah.
Kristen, could we just ask about the electrification? Because there was this incredible footage about the informal electrification and then images of electricity being put in and poles. Could we just, does everybody have an electricity connection now?
No, but I'll let Robert and or Tabang or Ginger talk to you about the latest with that.
Yeah. What's happening? There's the formal and the informal one, which we call Izinyoga Nyoga. The Izinyoga Nyoga is still working, and then in the main process, there's this formal one that is being engaged, and like on other places like Mandela Square, Johnson Stop, Swaziland, Angola. It is like a working now, but the Nyoga Nyoga is still on. And then on my side where I stay, in my house, I only have a box. I'm waiting for the wire to be connected. And then, but the street lights, they are working, they are there. Well, it is a process on that, because they said before, like where I stay now, which is race course, before I'll have the formal one in the house, they need to make sure that all the street lights are working, and then from there, that's when the formal one will work. Well, on other places it is working. Are you answered?
Yes, yes, that so it's a dual system still.
Yeah.
Yes, but basically the most of the community members, and even where they erected new electricity like Angola, I still have friends who are using Nyoga Nyoga. Cause like what's happening with Nyoga Nyoga, there was no electricity around Kliptown, so we started taking electricity from any electrical box we could use, or so it became tricky. And but most of the community, especially at Freedom Charter, no electric poles are being erected. There's nothing happening. So yeah, we're still using the same cables. The same cables we're talking about, Mari, are going to my neighborhood. So that's the power we're usually using. And
Right,
it is
yes.
dangerous, yeah, and it's not safe for everyone, but as a source of power, because we remember Kliptown, we've been without electrification since the implementation of Freedom Charter, even post-Freedom Charter. So it's the community members that we had to come up with how will we electrify Kliptown, because we were using paraffin. Most of the people got sick, asthmas, we had other diseases, but with this stolen electricity, we have few cases of burning shacks and stuff. We don't have people sleeping with imbaulas, wake up dead, we have few cases of those than first when there was no power at all.
I quickly want to follow up with a question that came earlier on the chat about people living with disabilities and having to navigate.
Yes.
The question there was having to navigate those very bad roads, the drainage areas, but I want to add to it having to navigate the electricity wires. Maybe you can say a little bit about people with disabilities. And
we have cases of disability people around, and that's where the community comes in, especially the community members of Kliptown and Ubuntu, because most of these elders, others, they can't walk most of the time. The ones who are walking will use wheelchairs, but most of them, it's people we know, and they just refer us or send us to the shops. Because I know, for instance, of this guy who uses a wheelchair, and every week we dropping tissue papers to him, and he will tell us, I need water, can you please fetch me water? So his door is almost open, he'll just shout, hey, can I have water? Hey, as he hears your voice as you pass, he'll come assist him. There's also a blind lady. She stays alone, but the community members are there at Marikana to assist her daily as well, Now and then they'll take like on a walk or some sort. Yeah, we have cases, but we didn't have much trouble with them in terms of electricity. Electricity, the challenge we had, it was mainly kids. You find people like we using different methods of connecting. Others, they'll use a straight wire. Others, they'll use a cable, and then some will use, we call it double life. And yeah, others, they do earth. So with an earth, you take your electric wire, you have to add it in, you add it in your shack, the same shack you live in, imagine, so that you could have more stable power. So we had kids being electrified by, shocking, who got shocked to death because of that. One of those kids was my friend, Joannis. Yeah, Joannis, we had to bury a 13-year-old daughter. Was trying to take a peach from a tree. Apparently, the fence that divided her and the tree had electricity. That's the bad part.
So that answers there was a specific question from one of the students about the danger of electricity in children, and so we're hearing firsthand from you just the reality.
Yeah, and it's not only children, because like in a community like Kliptown, there are no infrastructures. You find people walking the streets, and then maybe others, they just piss anywhere. And we had a challenge. This lady, she was in that condition, and she needed to use a loo. There are no public toilets, there are no infrastructures of anything of some sort. And while she was busy helping herself there, bad luck, there was electric cables, and she was shocked to death as well. And it wasn't something nice to experience as community members.
Absolutely. There's also some questions around waste, but I think really you've already answered them with what you talked about, and just the bottom line that there isn't any waste removal, and so somebody's asking if there are problems with illnesses with the polluted standing water.
I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are. Even if we won't have those data specifically, but we have challenges of people living along the flooding line, and where of which most of the waste. Kliptown is one. It's like it goes down. It's a steep, and the further down it goes, that the whole waste will be pushed down. We had a case of Umazwane, a lady who stayed in one of the houses. It was a shack, and then this whole waste, as it rained each and every year, dirt has gathered around her own house, and it was inside her own shack. She had to live with sand inside the house, and it's not just sand. Just next to a shack, there's like this whole trench or the trench that's been built by water as damages or creates soil erosion around those spaces. And Mazwane was in well. She got sick for some time, and Robert we had to come up with an idea. So Robert had to build a shack for her somewhere. And yeah, even body-wise, even it's not Mazwane, even her friends as well. We took about 4 or 5 people out of those lines, and if you could see them now and check the photos of them, it's totally different, the lifestyle they're living now. They could like live in a normal space where they have a proper bed to sleep, rather than you have to sleep and there's a whole sand inside the shack that's been dragged by water as it flushes down, So I'm sure we have cases, even though we won't have those data, especially for elderly people. And yeah.
And then I'll combine two questions, and someone is asking, are there any initiatives in Kliptown so that people aren't just waiting for the government? And how are the water taps distributed in the community, and how is the community coping during the COVID-19 era?
Oh, well, there are initiatives. For instance, there are a couple of organizations around Kliptown that are empowering kids only. That's a thing. And we also started this organization where during the COVID, we started spraying and sanitizing the waters and the taps around Kliptown, of which, for instance, I'll make an example of one street, Union Road. Union Road, it has about 22 toilets and also about 21 taps. So that's been used by different people that are sharing their yards and spaces and stuff. And in terms of development and people not waiting for the government, yeah, that's good. But for a community like Kliptown who has nothing, who like, people have lost hope. They don't even understand what the word freedom means to them. They've never. Do you understand how hard it is? Like, for you to have an electricity, you need to go steal it from your neighbor who has stole it from an electrical box that's standing. So it's challenging, those things. Like, people, they're not even aware of their own rights, even if we just next to our heritage site, the Freedom Charter Square Museum, people don't know what does that mean or what's the purpose of that space. So it becomes very, very challenging and very hard as well, because there's no any development. There's nothing positive happening, literally. Or, with development like places like Mandela, Angola, the ones that have been built now, like they've reblocked the space. So what are people, they're having nice toilets, they're starting to flush, they've used the pipes, they're flushing. Other ones like electricity, you could see, like, you have your own yard, and even in terms of crime, it will go down. And in terms of people like wanting to build themselves, because it's not like you have 2 shacks that are attached, or even 4 are attached like that. You can't even sleep because your neighbor is fighting the wife next door. They're fighting, or the kids, they are drunk, they're fighting with their father. You are there, it means you are part of that family. It's like 4 families sleeping in one big shack, So it's very difficult to develop people around there.
And I think in relation to the part of the question about the COVID as well, is what you're talking about with the shared households, is that the average in Freedom Charter Square is that 7 households are sharing each of those toilets. So
yes,
you start thinking about that in terms of the risk with the COVID transmission. And I've just screen shared. We actually, our organization 1955 started an initiative to address the COVID, and I'll let Tabang or Ginger or Robert tell you a bit more about it, but we're presenting a documentary film that we've made on it at the Southern African Cities Conference on September 1st. So, and I think, anybody can watch the film. So the documentary is about the project that we've done working with the COVID initiative in Kliptown. So, but maybe Tabang, you or one of you can take a few minutes and just tell the students what we've been doing.
Yeah, basically the idea was we wanted to create a radio station and the recycling using art. But while we were at it, the COVID entered the picture. So we had to, change our strategy, and we agreed on dealing with the COVID itself. So we even didn't have ideas on how to, approach this. So everything came as we went along. The ideas came as we went along. Like as we even got the messages from the WHO, World Health Organization. That's what is needed for to stop the virus itself. So normally we started with sanitizers and tissues for all ladies, and with time we bought sprays for the toilet, and we sort of started a routine, and we realized at some point that the idea of it's only about 2 or 3 trucks that are that are training in Kliptown. Most probably training more than 300 to 400 toilets, and the time frame itself is you find a situation whereby during the day, midday, the trucks are working, and it's especially for the hazards, you are eating at the same time. Here's the truck is draining, the smell itself. But all in all, we sort of realized that we should have a special routine on how to handle it. So we are already dealing with that. And yeah, the good part that I like about that is when we give out the tissues and sanitizers. The idea is I wasn't aware of my own community until when I go from house to house. It's when you finally saw the dire situation that we are in. Especially the old lady, the lady that the blind lady that Tabang talked about. Her condition is really not good. Yeah, and yeah. I can pass to Robert. He can say something also.
Yes, really, it is a good initiative. Being a challenge also on the other side, in a way that the time frame, as Ginger has said, is also challenging. Because while it's like you having light, and then the truck is here, and then sometimes it loses time. Sometimes they will tell you the truck just broke down, and then on the other side the chemical is mixed already. We're waiting for the trucks, and on the other side is broken, and the other challenge been doing the other side, and the other side also not been done. It's not quite good, because we're looking to do all the toilets, and we're talking about 500 to 600 toilets, and then Kliptown is big in a way that people will only see the whole Sisulu Square and say it's Kliptown. No, Kliptown is big. Kliptown is very big. We're talking of Falkamers. We're talking Ngubani, Angola, Mandela, Swaziland, a Freedom Charter, Marikana, Chicken Farm, It's big in a way, Winnicamp, race course. But we're trying and we are getting there. Well, we just have to do what we have to do in this time that we have, and it's not for us that we're doing it. Being in a challenge that is seeing that the government is like doing nothing during this COVID. This is an initiative that made us do something, not to wait for the government or wait for someone. For us, it's a good thing. And then even on this friendly side, it's also good in the way. And on the other way, it's challenging and sad. As my colleagues talked about a blind lady. I mean, it's challenging for us going there, giving her tissues. And then you ask yourself, how does she survive? Even though there are those who are helping, it's a challenge. On the other side, having those women who had breast cancer. I mean, and then you ask yourself, what's happening? Yeah, well, it's tough, but we are doing what we have to do. As I said, it's not for us, it's for the community. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, that's about it.
Do you guys want to, do you have any sort of final thoughts that you'd like to? There was one final question about the policing of the power lines.
What police? Police who? I mean, the police shouldn't they be chasing some criminals, not interfering with community development? So, like, I'm not afraid to say it. I'm one of the people who has broken that electrical box and stole the electricity, and I'm proud to do so, because if I hadn't done so, none of my family members, even my siblings, would have understand what electricity is. So, but today we have power and the government is starting to take notice, and then they're trying to bring electricity around Kliptown. But if I would have been sitting in the dark now, I wouldn't even know how to operate a computer at this day and age. I can't do a computer with paraffin. So police should be looking after criminals, not dealing with social issues.
Kristen, there was one question earlier. I mean, you spoke to some of the organizations, but I think there was a question about a community organization. Is there something like a development forum, an organization that where there's representatives and that tries to engage the government around housing or electrification or other developments?
We have one, the Abashali Forum, of which is very active, but again, around Kliptown, we have also capitalist niggers, you know, just like any other neighborhood. There are people who will take the tenders and push the tenders first before the communities, just like the same thing that happened next to the square by the flats. Actually, it was meant people's houses and flats or people accommodation were supposed to be built there. But once it was built and everything, apparently some of the leaders and the tenderpreneurs back then decided to sell it to Joshko, and hence it became. So we're not sure what's the story, but we have challenges of, because like as a community, we'll have different organizations as well. So you find this organization doing this, and then you're finding this is fighting the same organization is trying to bring good, but they're only there as well just for getting tenders or any work within the development space. But we at Kliptown, what I've realized, I think we lack a leadership, a vision, leadership with vision in a way, you know. And we've been trying to attend these community meetings. You could hear as well as the youth wanting to partake in these things as well, of which is good. But then again, you are aware some of them, they're just there to empower themselves and their friends. So it's a repetition of what's been happening for years. But yeah, that's the challenge of leadership, maybe.
Could you also speak just a bit to the, it's also complicated because they're what, each of the individual shack communities, which Robert started to name off, have their own leadership, and then to try to get all of those leaders on the same page to do in the same direction.
Yeah.
And
So,
that sort of conflict, maybe you could speak a little bit to that.
yeah, so Kliptown, all in all, it consists of about 14 to 15, because now it's been extended and they're doing reblocking. So we're nearly 15 to 16 squatter camps that makes one Kliptown. And then each and every squatter camp, they have their own structures and different representatives. And that's been a challenge. Well, I remember a few years back, I tried to engage all of these squatter camps so that we could have actually one public meeting at around Square, talking about Kliptown, discussing Kliptown, us as community members first, and then us electing people who will lead Kliptown, not these different parts as well. And it started good, but as some of the people, like I say, who are involved in other organizations, I wasn't part of any organization back then. They had their own plans and their own ideas, so they had to disrupt everything. So, but the point is, we're lacking leadership, especially with vision, and you find self-appointed people, like I say, it's different squatter camps. And whenever they're in a meeting or there'll be any development, some self-appointed guy will just stand up and say, I represent Tabang. No one will like confront him. They're not sure, even if they don't know him. He might come from one of the other sides as well. So yeah, that's the challenge, leadership, especially without vision.
I'm very aware of time, and I'm aware that we've taken over half an hour longer, and you've all very generously been answering our questions. I wonder whether we need to wrap up. Is anybody? So what I've done is I've made a copy of the chat. Is anybody wishing to ask a last burning question, something you felt hasn't been answered, or that's just occurring to you now? Perhaps one last chance, and then I think we need to wrap up. So I'm not seeing anything coming through in the chat, and I don't see anybody. Is anybody raising their hand? Not at this point. So from our side, I would like to thank all four of you for this incredible experience. I think there probably is nothing that can really replace face-to-face a visit and the feel and the smell and the taste of everything and the sound. But you've brought quite a lot of that into these clips, and seeing the settlement through your eyes and its surroundings through your eyes, I think has been a very valuable experience. Kristen, you'll share more information around the documentary, and then we'll see if the students can sign in for that. So I just wanted to say thanks on behalf of everybody. I don't know if anyone else wants to say anything before we hang up. But I also needed to thank the Wits TUB Urban Lab project for funding this component of the course.
And I just wanted to thank, it was really great having Robert and Tabang and Ginger answering the questions, and as well as the photography, and Robert organizing the sites in the community. So I just wanted to say thanks to them as well.
Yeah,
And then,
thank you, Sabonga.
Can we just ask Kristen to repeat the copyright on this, so that everybody is clear that this should not be distributed?
Right. The copyright for these belongs to the artists, so Tabang and Ginger, and so we're asking that they not be just freely distributed, because the TU Berlin has very generously paid us as an academic resource, and all of that money will go back to Kliptown. And so it becomes a way that you know, the academic research is less extractive from the community, because this is genuinely giving, you know, that money will go straight back. In this case, probably most of it will go into our COVID initiative. And so it's a way that it's a, you know, it benefits both the students and the community, which I think is a really positive step forward. You know, copyright relies on people being honest about the use, as we as academics know as well. So yeah, so that's where that stands.
Yes, so it will only be available for particular courses at Wits and TU Berlin.
Exactly.
And there's under that in that structure.
Exactly.
But thank you very, very much, and all the best for the COVID initiative in the immediate term, but also in the longer term. We hope to remain engaged around development in Freedom Charter Square.
Absolutely, yeah.
Sabonga.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks for giving us an opportunity to present Kliptown to you guys as well.
Thank you. So Kristen, you'll make available the recording?
Yes.
Or you'll capture the recording as we leave the meeting now?
Yes. And
yes, and to all the students, we have to get back into Teams. So we'll see you all on Teams. Thank you very much.
Thanks all. Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.